Swag out there and boss. Look,
And welcome to another episode of the Sartorian Geek Podcast by Webster Style, where we talk about bow ties, comic books, and everything in between. I'm your host, Webster Style, the man, the voice, the fragrance. So let's jump right into the download. Now, this is a game I've been waiting for a very long time, since myself and Brian Saff over at the NRW Checkpoint did a reaction to the reveal trailer, and it's none other than Double Dragon Gaiden Rise of the Dragon. And it's coming out on pretty much every damn thing. Well, really everything except Mac. Sorry, Mac users. Anyway, it's an action game developed by Arc System Works, published by Modus Games. In the game, the Double Dragon brothers, and if you don't know, is Billy and Jimmy Lee, return in this fresh addition to the iconic beat-em-up franchise with roguelike elements. Every playthrough is a chance at new action. Tag in with 2 of 4 starter characters or unlock 9 additional players, including a Bobo, each with their own special moves and unique playstyles. Now, this is a series that I have loved. This is a series that pretty much started the beat 'em up genre. For me, while I love the original arcade game, it was really the NES version of Double Dragon 2. My man and I, Jeff, used to play this game all the time, just blasting through it both regularly and with the Game Genie. It's just one of those NES titles that just is near and dear to my heart. And then when I played Double Dragon Neo a few years ago, it was such a worthy successor to the franchise, especially with some of the middling releases that we've had over the past 10 years or so. This game is one that will definitely tickle your fancy if you're looking for an old school beat 'em up, but also adding elements of modern gameplay as well. So Double Dragon Gaiden Rise of the Dragons is out now, and if I remember correctly, it retails for just the low price of $24.99. Next up, we have the interview with Miss Quamia Burgess. She is the host of the Pillow Talk with the T podcast. We had an amazing conversation a few weeks ago, and it was really interesting hearing her story, hearing her triumphs, and hearing how she came to start the podcast and what it really means outside of just the digital platforms. Stay tuned for my interview with Quamia, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about BlurCon and fragrances. What's going on, everybody? It's Webster Style, the man, the voice, the fragrance, coming back with another dope conversation. And this time we're joined by the lovely Quamia Burgess of Pillow Talk with the T podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you for joining me. I appreciate your time. And one of the things that really struck me, I'm sorry, let me back up. Could you tell everybody about Pillow Talk with the T?
Yes. Pillow Talk with the T is a candid, uncomfortable conversation where we no longer sweep under the rug and we speak about the pink elephant in the room.
Okay. And that's one of the things that really had me gravitate toward the podcast and wanting to have you on, because as we all know, in the past, really, pandemic kicked off a lot of conversations online. And one of the things I really appreciated about your podcast and the demeanor of the guests, and really the conversations that you've had, is in contrast to a lot of the, say, relationship conversations, the red pill stuff, the pink pill stuff. I understand arguments. I don't disagree with some points based on my own life experiences, and I'm pretty sure a lot of ladies can say they don't disagree with some points either. However, much like a recent podcast shows I listened to, there's a whole lot of capping going on. A whole lot. And
Absolutely.
One of the things I really enjoyed about your podcast, it was real people. It was real people, real life, real experiences, and being truthful and honest. And there was one I was listening to the other day, and I forget which one it was, but someone brought up accountability, and you voiced how that triggered you. And I really appreciate that. Now I understand why and how that really started in this whole lexicon of conversation between men and women, just conversations in general. However, it's one of those words now that has just become so regurgitated. Like it's just a word that's used to try to explain. But again, accountability means nothing if there's no action. It's not really accountability. You're just saying the word. And I liked how you really brought that to the forefront, and how that, especially now, is in many respects cheapened what the word means in all these conversations, because it always gets thrown out. And I really liked how you had that spin on it during the course of that conversation. Like I said, it's real life, and I really enjoyed that about your podcast.
Yeah. And that's the thing about that I even enjoy about the podcast, is because I like to have real organic people. I like to have people speaking, telling their story, not me telling their story for them. And I like them to come unapologetic, transparent, and just being themselves. It's like basically having that uncomfortable conversation at grandma's kitchen table.
Right. And I noticed you had my boys from the Uncomfortable Convo a while back, and Kendra as well, when she was a bit more active. I was been on that podcast a couple times as well. Now tell me, how did you start Pillow Talk with the T?
Well, Pillow Talk with the T, you got to thank family members for that, honestly. Because I was never thinking about putting myself out there to even create a podcast. It was the fact is that a family member of mine felt like my voice, or there was a voice of mine, needed to be put out there. Me being the elder sister, grandchild, and older first cousin, I'm always the ones that people come for advice, and I tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, and I give it to them straight, because that's something that our grandparents did with us. So it's like me taking on that, I'm giving it to them straight. Fast forward, rewind to a year later, I just swooped it away, wasn't even here and what she was talking about. And then all of a sudden, you ever felt like that fire within you, you know that there's something you have to do, but you don't know what that fire is. Like I say, fast forward a year later, basically that's when we family gathering again, met up, same cousin that brought it to my attention. She said it was like, hey, did you start that podcast? So as soon as she said that, that's when the flame was like ding, 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 ding. And I'm like, are you serious? You telling me that's what that is in my belly that I need to do? So in regards to that, for no one effect, anything I do, I make sure I do forthcoming with my overall all. So when I did decide that was what it was, and figured out that's what it was, that's when I ended up creating Pillow Talk with the T podcast.
That's awesome. I swear, it seems like I'm hearing similar stories. Not quite like that, but there's always that one person who is always kind of talking to you about it. Hey, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And then it just like that lights that spark, and then that flame just, consumes everything. I think that's really awesome. Now, what sort of reception have you gotten since you really started the podcast and it's been expanding?
I would say basically I get a lot of women, but men and women, but majority women, just basically saying, I love the conversation. You saying exactly what it is that I'm feeling or what I'm going through. I feel like I could relate to you, and you're speaking about your experiences, and even just the fact of I have so many people feeling like there's no judgment talking to you, and the conversations that you do create, they are actually real and what we are going through nowadays. So those are the different things that I get from men and women, but of course majority of women, and I love it. And it's like a woman recently last week, she was like, I feel like you was putting the words and the voice to my words that I just didn't know how to be able to say it. And that's with a lot of people nowadays. They have that inside them that they want to put a voice to it, but they don't have the security, the confidence, or they worrying about what everybody's going to think and say. So no, let me not say that because I don't want to be judged.
Right. And again, really enjoying your podcast and your authenticity. And that's something I also love as well. The the non-judgments, especially for a lot of your topics. I don't remember if you had polygamy coming up. Was that's one you've had a lot of the more adult content, and those topics unto themselves. Some people can get a bit squeamish about and really talking about what they like, what they don't like, who they are individually, especially in a public setting like this. And I really enjoy how you, as a host, really make your guests feel comfortable talking to you and talking to the audience as well, and never once having that eye of judgment on them, like, girl, you like that, or something of that nature. And I really appreciate that about you. And again, more so with the podcast as well, going back to it, and I have to keep saying this is something I really love with every episode I've listened to thus far, the authenticity, much like you said, as far as someone said you are speaking things that they're thinking, and exactly, these are real conversations. And I think in many respects, especially with the proliferation of so many podcasts nowadays, especially on adult topics, real life topics, that's sorely missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I've really seen that been missing outside, because these are conversations that I grew up having with my family. Even at 41, I'm still having this with my mother. And if my grandparents was here, I would still be having it with them, because that's something that they created for us. And that's something I also created for my son, who's currently 22 years old. And I felt like me just looking outside the world. When I went to college, before I went to college, I thought, this is what the world is. We have these uncomfortable conversations, we bridging the gap, and we are speaking how we feel. But when I went to college, I was like, oh, everybody don't live the way I live. Everybody don't have the upbringing that I have. So I was like, why is that? That's just so. Then, of course, I had to sit back. I had to learn. I had to listen, and I had to ask my friends, why is that? And of course, they, tell me, well, that's something they choose not to do. That's something their family or their mother, parents, or whatever, et cetera, did not create for them, because they felt like everything has its place. Absolutely. But I felt like when it comes to your family, your parents, they're your first teachers. They're the ones to be able to teach you about your emotional intelligence, about having that uncomfortable conversation, and then tap into what it is that you feel. So, and I seen that outside. I was like, nah, we got to fix this. We got to do better.
No, you're absolutely right with that. Now, I want to shift gears for a moment and ask your opinion on something. And this is a question that I have a certain mindset, especially I like to say I'm a gentleman. I do my best to every day. And one of the topics that when you speak of men and women, but men specifically, and being a gentleman, is that topic of chivalry. So I want to ask you, do you think chivalry is dead? Nope,
not at all. Not at all. I do not believe in that. Anything that I feel like is dead that's because you choose that it's dead. But chivalry is definitely not dead. It's something I teach. Like I say, I teach as my son, the males in my family members continue to do. That's something that both of my partners continue to do to me every single day. So I believe that chivalry is still alive. It all depends on who we talking to. It all depends on the individual. This is something they practice. It's something that they believe. Again, something you believe will never be dead.
I love that answer. And for myself, I've always asked, when I've heard people, whether it's men or women, say that, I said, who taught you? Like, who do you hang with? Because my circles, my friends, for the most part, I got a couple of whole friends. They always been that way. I love them to death, their family, but
yeah,
I was like, who are you? Who have you been around where you say that this is dead? If that's the case, you need to change your circle. You need to learn some new lessons, because very much like you said, it's dead if you say it's dead. You're dead if you don't act on, you perform the actions, and you don't have the mindset as well. And I really, really appreciate that answer, because I think that, especially in these conversations we're having, I feel like in those conversations, not your conversations, because your conversations are different, that mindset is just lost. And it's so you on this side, you on that side. Yeah, we may meet in the middle
Yeah.
sometimes, but it comes off as performance art and not real dialogue on
Yeah.
a lot of these podcasts. And a very topic like chivalry is something that, yes, I can see maybe a lot of younger women not really seeing that, because the men, I can understand. I'm just a few years older. I'm 44, so I totally get that and understand we may have a different perspective on how things are supposed to be, because that's how we were taught and raised, and that's how my mama raised me. Yes ma'am, no ma'am, holding the door open, things I still do to this day. So I totally get that. And that's why these conversations that you have and others are very important, because you get to see that different perspective and also a realistic perspective. I think that, again, I can't harp on this enough, because that's why I really enjoy your podcast. Not just the rawness of it. And, we're not sort of talking about raw as far as cursing involved, but raw as far as the transparency of what people are thinking and what people are feeling and even what people are going through. And I know just some of the podcasts I've listened to, you've touched on your story and the things that you've gone through personally in relationships in your life to, get you to this point. So I really enjoyed that. And I'm going to switch gears a little bit too, and maybe somewhat of a jar. Bit lighter than previous. So I am a humongous fragrance head, and I want to ask you, are you into fragrances at all?
I love fragrances, men, women, and men. I love it.
So what fragrance right now are you constantly going back to, if there is one?
I love J'adore by Dior. That's something that's one of my favorites. And then but my also one time that was introduction to me when I was a kid was Clinique Happy. That was something was amazing. So even though they got remixes, they got other ones, but Clinique Happy is the number one uno. So, but between those two, yes.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. It doesn't matter which partner or both partners. What fragrances do you like to smell on your partners? Or even signature or notes, if not specific fragrances.
Okay, so I'm trying to remember one of my partners, his fragrance. This is his favorite, but I can't remember what it is. But it's very light. It's not loud, but it's not too light. It's like in the middle, and it really blends so amazing with his own body chemistry. And I've said this before. I'm not sure if you probably heard this episode on my show. Every time he sprayed on, I'm like, nah, you can't even leave out the door yet. Like, wait a minute, 1 second. But yeah, I have to I can't remember what it is, but it's amazing. And I seen it's like a black little square bottle. I didn't even pay attention to the name, but it's so freaking amazing on him.
It might be what, Blue shouldn't be. It's a little square bottle, could be. But no, you know what? I think, guys, we all have that one fragrance that our significant others, like you cannot leave the house. I was talking to another interview the other day, which just premiered today, and he was saying how, I forget the fragrance, but he said, the looks, and my wife's like, you really wore it out the house today? So I get it. I totally understand. And that's one of the things I love about fragrance, not so much the attention, but the sort of, well, much like you said about your partner, how you can find that right fragrance that really mixes with your body chemistry.
Yes.
That's why I always say that fragrances are intimate, because even though it smells a certain way, once it mixes with you, it's different. It's a unique scent, regardless of what it is. And that's what excites me to really collect, to smell different things. You see how different things smell on me, how different notes work in the weather. A winter fragrance, how's that work? Like, it's 84 degrees today. I'm like, okay, how does this really heavy, dark oud tobacco vanilla fragrance work in the hot spring weather compared to when it was like, I love that experimentation
Yeah.
of it.
And a lot of people don't know that you're supposed to have like different colognes and perfumes during each season. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't really know that. So, but you got that one signature, and I understand that people do wear like they just want to wear it all season around, and it works for some, and some it may not work for.
Yeah, that's very true. I always say diversify. You don't need a whole lot, but get a couple in your arsenal, some you can switch out. And also, there are some fragrances that work for different occasions. For instance, I wore Pete and Pedro's Villain yesterday, which is similar to Tom Ford's Tobacco Vanilla. So it's tobacco, vanilla, spice. That is not a fragrance I would wear to a black tie event. It's very heavy, it's very rich, it's very dark.
Yeah.
So that's like one of those things where you got to know where the right place and time, as well as seasonal is as well, what really works for your fragrance. Also, and again, your body chemistry is a very big factor into how things work, how long fragrances last, because there are fragrances that last long on my skin and my body chemistry. Then I'll go online and I'm like on TikTok on the comments like, oh, this only lasted X amount of time with me. I was like, okay, I understand your mile may vary depending on the fragrance. Like it lasts 4 hours on you, it lasts 8 hours on me. Maybe my skin absorbs it more, maybe the moisture I use, I don't know. But that's part of the fun with fragrances, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love it. Same thing with me. But I grew up big because I'm not sure, maybe since we are the same age, like my grandparents, and it's always come back to the grandparents where those was the times, even like my stepfather and my mom, when they used to go out and they used to have date nights and go out to dance, go to they go to dance, the step clubs. And I seen him put on his suit and tie, and she got on her beautiful dress with her heels. And that was just something that I seen that both of them do, my grandparents and my parents, where my grandmother, she taught us about scents and perfumes, and my brothers and them about colognes and how important it is. And that's how I also knew more about the pressure points, because people think you're supposed to just go like this.
No, yes.
And I'm like,
compassion. Like, why do you do that?
It's the pressure points. I don't like when people do that. I do not like that. I'm like, you're doing so wrong. Oh, but I love teaching people and saying, no, let me show you how to really do this. And they then they especially if a person is open-minded to learning. And they were like, I never knew that. And I was like, absolutely, right. Trust me, it will last longer in your pressure points.
Right. Exactly. Now, let me ask you another question. This is more maybe not so much personal, but in your own words, who is Quamia?
Quamia is unapologetic. She's transparent. She's loving. She's caring. She have an open mind to learning so many different things as she continue to walk on this earth and to continue to elevate to be the best person of herself. But Quamia also had that don't give a fuck attitude too. So, and not only that, as I continue to learn, is that she has standards. She has boundaries, and she have no problem filling up your cup long as you actually reciprocate it back.
Awesome. It actually, it brings up a question that's popped in my head. You've been doing the podcast, what, 2 years now? Or is it?
I've been doing a podcast for 3 years, because for 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. Now, with the topics that you've had, the guests that you've had a lot of serious conversations, a lot of personal conversations. How has, if doing the podcast, helped you grow?
Woo, good question. It basically helped me grow in just the fact of just communication wise, being, because people don't understand it's a difference of listening and hearing. They don't know that it's this is a separation in the two, and just being able to communicate by doing so. Because part of communication is listening as well as hearing. So that definitely helped me grow in just listening and hearing. It helped me in regards to just having more sympathy for other people's stories and other people's situations, and also me, Kwamia then and Kwamia now, from the fact of this podcast helped me being able to accept people's experiences, because that old me was like, girl, what are you talking about? But of course, through healing journey, the whole thing of life and what I've been through, and even therapy, and even just getting this from Yama Van Zant, because that's one powerful woman. She said you can never be able to change no one's experience, but just accept their experience and what they've been through. So this podcast was able to also help me do that, and concrete overall out of everything else that I've been through, but also listening and hearing and having that understanding of people's story.
That's powerful. That's really, really powerful. You know what? I'm gonna end it there, because that's a heck of a way to leave this interview. Kwamia, I want to thank you again for your time, and I appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yes, so you can be able to find Pillow Talk with the T podcast on all podcast streaming platforms, as well as on every social media platform as well. And not only that, but also on YouTube every Thursday at 12 midnight. There's a new episode that drops with deeper and deeper, more uncomfortable conversations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Make sure you check her out, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you next time. And that was our interview with Miss Kwamia Burgess. Make sure you check her out on the Pillow Talk with T podcast. Find her on YouTube, TikTok, and all your major, podcast platforms. I want to talk about, it's convention season. We'll be talking a little bit more about some of the conventions we've been to in the next episode or two. But I want to talk about BlurCon. Now, BlurCon is really the convention I make sure I go to every year. It is one that I have always loved the premise of inclusion with the con, and is one that outside of pandemic, I was there pretty much every year from the start. Last week you heard the panel, the Toy and Geek panel, our fourth one with Will Mapp, Dana, and Frenchie, and just from maybe I'm biased, it gets better and better every year with the conversation and the points of view that we have in our own collective experiences. But not just that, the questions from the audience, just really, I love the thoughtfulness, the insightfulness just from the diverse collective that was there to watch us talk. It was really awesome and really cool. But I want to give some shout outs and some impressions of the con itself. Now, I am for some reason not a big celebrity guy, so I didn't really I didn't care about meeting some of the celebrity guests, but I will say, not that I needed to meet her, but just seeing her in person, Karen Ashley, who was really one of the only women that I had a crush on when I was a teenager. I don't know why, because I look at my adult self. She's so not my type, but as a teenager, she is someone, she's like the lone Power Ranger I had a crush on. Everybody else loved the Pink Ranger, especially in the high school I went to. They loved the Pink Ranger. I loved Aisha. So that's just me. Anywho, so it was cool seeing her in person, as well as Cree Summer was there. That woman doesn't age. I swear she's a vampire. And just the overall vibe was just, it's always like a homecoming, like a big party. And there's no judgments. I'm not saying cons in general, you have judgment, but there was no judgment there. I had a great time just seeing old friends. I literally saw people that I have not seen in 20 years that I went to school with, and just even some cats that I've gone to school with that I end up seeing every year. And with that said, this may not mean anything to you, but even while I was there, it was somewhat somber. We lost one of our friends this past year, and even though Matt and I, we weren't on the phone all the time. We still coordinated, talked, texted every now and again, but it was guaranteed I'd always bump into him at BlurCon. And as I walked through the halls of the retailers, or I guess the artist alley and whatnot, I got a sense of sadness because I knew that I wouldn't be bumping into him this year since he passed away a few months ago. And so I had, personally speaking, a bit of sadness being there, because I knew my friend wouldn't be there. I knew I wouldn't bump into him. I knew we wouldn't catch up. I knew we wouldn't talk about our families. I knew that wasn't going to happen this year. So that was always in the back of my mind as I went through, but it was just so many people, and it's always so hot in that hotel. It'll be interesting what happens next year as far as the expansion. Shout out to Navy Montel, as always. It's always great seeing him. Shout out to Chris Fury and the team from Blur's Eye View. It was great finally meeting a lot of them in person after talking over the years online, sitting in on their live taping, getting a free copy of the Halo series as well as a participant. So that was really awesome. And I cannot not thank Will, Dana, Frenchie, Keita, whatever you want your name to be. It's always a pleasure doing the panel with you guys, and you guys are really delightful and intelligent people, and it's just a pleasure to work with you guys. So yeah, shout out to Herlin and all of the staff and volunteers who make the BlurCon happen every single year. I enjoy it, but I will say this is something we had an overall conversation about amongst us, as well as some others who were regular attendees. It was different this year, at least in our opinion. It was different in the vibe. It was a great vibe, but it lacked some of the uniqueness that made it BlurCon before. And I don't know if it's just a lot more of the same people are coming that you see at other cons, but a lot of the panels were not as diverse as they had been in past years. At least that's just an overall assessment we had. There also, and I think this more so was from the attendees, not so much the organizers, but I didn't feel that LGBTQI presence, or that queer presence, like I felt in previous years, especially in the beginning, because there was a really big push for, that inclusiveness of everyone, and the queer dynamic of that inclusiveness was really pushed. I didn't feel that this year. And again, that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It was just observation and perception during my time there. So I don't know. It's interesting how the con is morphing and changing every single year, and I am very excited to see what it looks like next year, if they finally take the opportunity to really expand outside of the primary hotel. And I forget the theme of it, but I'm interested and excited. This is con I'm excited to see grow in many respects. I don't think, and I don't want it to grow like AwesomeCon. AwesomeCon going the first year, I remember it was this little small show. Now it's this humongous show, and maybe it's just me. I feel like when these shows get to be these pop culture magnets, some of the charm is lost, and they become like every other convention that you go to. And BlurCon, Baltimore Comic Con, and a couple other cons that I go to on a regular, I like the quaintness of it. I like the one-on-one that you can get. Even I went to Big Lit Comic Con, which you'll hear some of my interviews from that next 7 weeks. I could go right up and talk to Ron Simmons. I went right up and talked to some of the other guests that was there. Not buying an autograph, not buying a photo op, just saying hello, how you doing? And thanking them for the impact they had on my life or other people's lives. And the larger cons, you don't really get a chance to do that. So we'll see how BlurCon evolves over the years, but it's still the place to be. Oh, and the food trucks, that Jamaican truck. Every year I gotta get the oxtails. They are so good. It is so, so good. So that's my take on BlurCon. Let's talk about a new fragrance that I got from one of my TikTok followers. And I escape her screen name at the moment. I'll put that down in the show notes so you guys can give her a follow. She just had a bunch of samples lying around, sent them to me. And one of the samples that I received was London Oud number 9 from a company called Emor. Now, this is one that I couldn't find a note breakdown on it. I think it may be discontinued, but you can find a 120 ml bottle, I think, online in many places for under $55. I have enjoyed it. It's a little alcohol-y in the base, in the beginning, but that dissipates pretty quickly. It is a nice oud, kind of a synthetic oud. Some aldehydes too, and I'm sorry, it's kind of hard. I had a spillage, so the sample that I'm smelling right now is combining with some other fragrances, but it's a fragrance, an oud that I really liked. It was one that actually got a couple of comments as well. So it was one that I was really surprised. I didn't know how to take it. And especially considering looking online, you can get a large bottle for under $60. I think it's one you guys should definitely check out. So that's my take on London Oud number 9 by Emor. Now, I'm talking about ways to support. How can you support a brother? Webster Style, we got bills to pay. So first of all, you can check out Basil and Sage with their wonderful subscription box service. You can check out the unboxing of the July box that's on YouTube. Now, if you like what you see, boxes run $50 a month for the subscription, and you get a whole lot more than $50 worth of merchandise in your box. But if you act now and use the code Webster Style 10, you can get a discount on your first box. Next up is Patreon. Put things out there, some things that are not YouTube friendly. And also, you want to get the podcast early? Become a producer. Just $1, $2, or $3. You can become a producer, associate producer, or an executive producer of the Sartorial Geek podcast by Webster Style. And there are also some Patreon-only podcasts there where we get into some topics that, aren't as PC as we have here. So check us out on Patreon, Webster Style. And I like colognes. You like colognes. We all like to look good. I suggest you check out Pete and Pedro. I have become a fan of the company, not just because of the affiliate marketing, of course, but also with the fragrances. I love the fact that the line of fragrances are inspired by some of the top selling fragrances on the market, and they only run you $50 for a 50 ml bottle. In addition to that, they have a whole host of grooming products on the site as well. And if you use the link in the show notes, you can get 10% off your first purchase. And of course, I don't know about you, I always need an extra boost of energy. And sometimes you don't want to drink coffee. Other times you want to grab something that's a bit more rich as far as the energy content, but you don't want all of the sugar. I suggest try W Energy Drinks. You can get 10% off your first purchase if you use the code WebsterMan or the link in the show notes. So that's how you can help support and keep the lights on. But where else can you find me? I am all over the web. You can find me every week over with my crew over at Nerds Rule the World. First up, you can find me with my man Brian Saff talking about the latest and greatest in new video game releases on the NRW Checkpoint. Then you can find me talking about wrestling with my man Kuya P and Sean Mongo, the voiceover king. We are the NRW's House of Black, talking wrestling on the Kayfabe Baby, the NRW Ring Generals podcast every week over at Nerds Rule the World. Of course, websterstyle.com as well. You'll find it there. Once they drop on YouTube, you can find me on social media. On Instagram, you can find me at Webster Style, and of course, Sartorial Geek. On Twitter, X, Webster Style, and of course on TikTok it's _ Webster Style. And of course, anything and everything that is Webster Style can be found at websterstyle.com. Drop me an email, comments, criticisms, questions. Want to be on the show? info@webstylemagazine.com. Now, as always, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your listening ear. And remember, stay safe out there and be blessed.
Ensemble, are you the enemy? If you're not defending the presence of Millie in the vicinity without a bow tie? Okay, I might have went over the edge. Besides, I really left them clothes on them legs and thighs. Need to get strong, we can lift them to the sky. The party starts at 12. You got a little time to get it on. And known fact, I'm the type who puts it on. And after that, take a picture with your phone of the outfit. Admit I'm choosing what we own. No, it was Tree Green Tuesday. Had to be Bow Tie Thursday. Had to be. White Wednesday? I don't. Well, I know last time. Well, I wore polka dot. You didn't wear. Miss Millie on them heels killing them, but I'm sure it's a Thursday. Bow Tie Thursday. Pasta cream in your heels looking sharp, babe. Acting like you don't know the rules up in the workplace. Must I remind you it was till on your birthday? Don't get me wrong, I think we killed in the birthdays. And you picked the hella fit for the church day. Let's say you picked the wrist game poet. Now you got the floor filled with bras that you purchase. Pick a color scheme that can match the berry corset. Get the berry cream, get the berry cream, get the berry cream. We can make a little scene, cause no one man should have all that styling. Take it off, clothes on the floor piling. No one girl should fit it all in them jeans. So take it off and let me see what's under them seams. Cause no one man should have all that styling. Take it off, clothes on the floor piling. No one girl should fit it all in them jeans. So take it off and let me see what's under them seams. And see what it seems. If it is what it seems. Do it again. Not, chicks be looking thick leggings, you know what I mean? I don't know. Take a hint though, don't try to get me at a moment. Mint though, smoking hot, rocking this pin so thin. Tie hairline, looking like a stencil. Pimp, no lie, I'm sharper than a utensil. Instrumental, plain dang, homie. I was hoping we could walk out with that bang bang, honey. See them plain Janes, honey. Them lame frames, funny. We tailor fitted crazy like that thing came on me. Hey, mommy, look a lady, main thing. Want me on the scene, fit popping like a main vein, running blood color lips, smashing with the hand clutch, money holding back. Kinda funny, can you tell me what's the price tag of the Range Rover? Hang on me when we walking, looking Gucci like that thing sprayed on me. Walking with a limp like an ankle sprained on me. Yeah, I rock the cardigan. She don't really want me because one man should have all that styling. Take it off, clothes on the floor piling. No one girl should fit it all in them jeans. So take it off and let me see what's under them seams. Cause no one man should have all that styling. Take it off, clothes on the floor piling. No one girl should fit it all in them jeans. So take it off and let me see what's under them seams. Hey, let me see. Let me see. Let me see. Aim off and on the middle of my lawn. Aim off and on the middle of my lawn. Cause no one man should have all that styling. Take it off, clothes on the floor piling. No one girl should fit it all in them jeans. So take it off and let me see what's under them seams. Oh, you wanted to? Oh, I completely read that wrong.